Well, cool, guys. Well, it looks like it'll be a small crew tonight. So we can get into some stuff here. Michael, you'd recognize what we're going over tonight. Remy, I think actually, yeah, you too at some point, but obviously being able to reiterate what we're going over tonight, and so that's important, just from your perspective. So we'll kind of roll through in the beginning, a couple of things, and we'll just dive right into, what I wanted to get into, guys, and then we can just keep it kind of in here. What'll be cool. We'll drive through. So, where's it at here? Make sure you guys see this okay. You guys seeing that okay? Yeah, awesome. All right. So I'll put it, if anybody comes in, I'm just gonna put it through the mode here to get going, and then see if anybody comes through. All right. You guys good? Thumbs up? Yeah, awesome. All right. So like we talk about each week, guys, you guys already know, we think in recipes, gray area thinking. Right. And again, the number one question, are you mindfully choosing what to think about for your performance process? So again, like I talk about each time, making sure whatever, it doesn't matter what I say, doesn't matter what another coach, parent, what somebody else says, right? What matters is fundamentally is what you believe first. And then you listen to advice and ideas, and you take away other people's process. But again, like we always talk about, right? Your thought process will never be faster than your own belief system. And so when we talk about mindset performance and we talk about thinking and recipes, that's what we're battling for, the highest quality ingredients. We're trying to get to the core of what do you believe? And then you use the rest of the world to participate that's around you to make sure that that belief system is as strong as possible, is as confident as possible, that you feel like what you're thinking is as correct as you possibly can think. And so there's a lot of gray area to that thought process. But again, the whole idea of what we're trying to get into is understanding that at its core, it's a recipe of different ingredients that synergize like a sandwich. And so you guys all know, we talk about the idea of how we start to take away different ingredients, different words. So here, when we talk about mindset performance, we have two different words. When we're on a line playing together with other line mates, we have 5 different thoughts or thought processes, right? Including the goalie 6, right? So when we're playing, there's multiple different ingredients that are synergizing, interacting, right? And so that's how we want to think about our thought process, is we want to get at the core of it to understand, all right, well, I know that there's this one idea coming from a line mate, or there's one idea that I have about this scenario about a teammate, but then I have another idea, another thought with another teammate, and another idea, another thought with another teammate. And oh, by the way, there might be thoughts that I have with opponents that we're up against. There might be thoughts that I have what my coach is thinking, right? What a scout is thinking, and on and on. So the idea of what we're always trying to do is we're trying to take the best ingredients. So if we know mindset performance is my focus, then we want to dive into, all right, well, each ingredient, each word has its own thought process. But then when I fuse them, when I synergize and bring together, what does that actually create? And so that's when we talk about the sandwich analogy, or when we talk about words, we keep on building upon that. So again, as we talked about the framework, right now we talk about mindset performance framework. So as we keep leveling up, guys, and we keep going through, you guys are seeing the reiteration. But this is what we mean by, in its simplest form, by just using words, is how you build upon the framework of our thought process, but most importantly, how we build upon the framework of a recipe, right? High quality ingredients that when they start to come together, it starts to build out a bigger narrative, a bigger story that goes on in our belief system. And so again, right, without going through, as you guys have seen this quite a few times now over the last weeks, but what I like about how this framework lays out is the top tells a story, right? It kind of lays out a story. The middle lays out, all right, here's bullet points that I could think about in my process. And then the bottom kind of cleans it up in a 6-word update and says, here's the 6 most important words that I need to focus in on. And then you can reverse engineer on that as well. But it's a great framework to look at in anything that we're doing, right? If you go over a play with your coach, you want to create a narrative around it. Well, what's the narrative that I have in my mind of what that play might look like? Then I want to break it down into steps. Well, how can I break it down into easy to digest steps, right? So again, you might look at explaining a scenario in a game on a zone entry, or, hey, here's what happened. I went wide with the puck. My line mate went to the net, I shot the puck. You might tell this story, this narrative that's built around it. But then we might break it down systematically. We might say, all right, well, I was F1 with the puck, I went wide. My partner, my line mate was F2, they went straight to the net. And then we had F3, came in high in the zone, they were available for the puck, right? So you're breaking it down into 3 easy steps to think about it even more in a way that, again, makes it simpler to understand, but you're taking 3 ingredients and you're breaking it down to 3 steps. And then ultimately, then at the end of the day, what we're really chasing is that one idea, that one thought process. And so as we talk about that, right, as we build that out, a big part of that framework, leads us into understanding the transition game. And so today, guys, what I wanted to put, point out, and I was hoping obviously there was more on the call as we're going through here today. But the idea behind this process, right, as we're walking through, is the transition. So when we talk about the mindset method transition game framework, the mental transition game framework, these are the 3 parts that every player is going through. Anybody mentally who's walking through and thinking about their thought process, this is in essence what the thought process looks like, right? If we broke it down into basically transition zones. So just like in hockey, I see you guys finally noticed whose performance guy this is, right? But, as we lay this out, guys, I want you to think about your mind in this context, right? You want to think of it as, well, there's an offensive zone part to my mind, there's a neutral zone part to my mind, and then there's a defensive zone part to my mind. So just like hockey shows us how there's 3 different zones of play that we're in, well, depending on how quickly you transition between each zone from offense to defense is really where so much of the game is won and lost. So our thought process is the same exact way, right? Our thoughts, how fast we transition from defensive posture or position to an offensive posture or position, inside of that, right, that ability to transition from one to the other is this small space. It's quick, it's fast, but that small space, anyone who's a Bloodline brother knows, is really where the neutral zone is. Bless you, Michael, right? It's really where the neutral zone plays in the game. So even though it's small, it's really big in terms of being a mindful athlete, right? It's really big in terms of being a Bloodline brother where, or Bloodline sister, where I'm thinking about this. I'm understanding my process inside out. And I'm also understanding the process of those I'm participating with. I'm open-minded to realizing it's not just my mind that's a part of this process, it's everybody else's mind that's a part of this process as well. And so when we talk about this mental transition game framework, what we're laying out is understanding how you can break down these 3 specific words: mindset, mindful, and mindless. And so the reason why these 3 words are important is because publicly, what most people think when it comes to mindset, and when you ask most players, when you say, well, what is mindset to you? A lot of people, when they think of mindset, they think of it in the traditional sense. Yep, I'm going to set my mind to this and I'm going to go do it. And they're not wrong, right? You set your mind to do this. So I'll keep it simple. I've set my mind to go to the net. I've set my mind I'm going to shoot the puck when I get the puck, right? There's not much that's going on cognitively. You are fully aware that when I get the puck offensively, here's what I'm going to do with it. When the puck is on my tape and I enter the zone, here's what I'm going to do with it. So you're limited. When you have possession of the puck, when you're in an offensive posture, right? When you're the one making the decision, you're limited to how many choices you're going to make. Cognitively, we know, right? One of the things we know about the neuroscience of how the brain works, you can make about 7 plus or minus 2 decisions, right, in a second. So that means is that cognitively, when we're in that space of, all right, I got to make a choice. The reality is when you're under pressure, you're really only able to think of 1 or 2 things tops, really. And that's mindset. Mindset is, I'm focused on this and I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to take this shot. I'm going to make this play. But it's only going to happen when offensively you're in complete control of the play. That's what offense is, right? Ultimately, you're creating offense when you're in complete control, which is ultimately the puck is on your tape, right? Or you're in a position where you're moving the puck in some way. But ultimately, that's what we mean when we're talking about the offensive side of the mind. You're committed to making a play happen. But the reality is, once your mind is set and you've decided to make a choice, that's it. You're making that choice. So that's why we call it the offensive zone, because the moment you've made a choice, you're now moving towards creating something. You're now moving towards, okay, I'm going to choose to do this action, to do this behavior, and that is ultimately now going to lead to something that's about to get created, which could be a shot, could be a pass, right? All these different ways that we can think about it from an offensive sense. So that's mindset in a nutshell of it's an offensive quality in your brain where you're making a decision and you're doing it now. Now, in the moment, here's boom. I'm in the moment. I've got it. I'm making the choice now. What mindful means, right, is where now this is the part where from the neuroscience, we know you can make 40 plus or minus decisions, right, per second. So now you've got more opportunities to think about. So this is the place where you can be conscious of what you're thinking you might do. So if I'm going to shoot the puck when I get it, well, when I'm in the neutral zone, right now I'm being mindful of my surroundings. I'm thinking about, well, where's the position of the puck? Where's the position of the opponent? Where's my teammate going with the puck? Where can I align so I can receive the puck as quickly as possible and shoot it? You have multiple other layers of things that you can actually now think about. Your mind is now open to, right, being thoughtful in the process where, okay, I can take a look at it, be conscious of all these different scenarios of how I can potentially put myself in a really good position to execute my mindset. So that's a big part of the difference between mindset and mindful is mindset, you're really only thinking of one or two things and you're doing it when the puck is on your table, or you're making the choice, you're making a decision. That's it. This is what I'm committed to doing, right? It's a non-negotiable. You know for yourself, this is what I'm doing daily. That's it. This is I'm going after this. Mindful is, but what's it going to take in my behavior? What's it going to take in the steps for me to align that when I get that opportunity to make that choice, to make that decision, I know that there's multiple different ways that I can adapt to the situation to position myself to be ready for when that moment comes. Because we don't spend all day making decisions and go, do this, do this, do this. That's not how our brains work, right? What we're doing is we're waiting till somebody asks us a question. Are we engaging with somebody, right? Are we making a play, right? Are we trying to send somebody a text? Boom, I send, right? That's an offensive play. But I was thinking about what I was going to say beforehand. That's a mindful play. So our mind is always transitioning from an action, a behavior we're doing. But when I'm mindful, I'm thinking about, well, what are the choices that I could potentially make? What are the different ways that I could potentially see this play that I'm going to make, these words I'm about to say, these things I'm about to do? And so we're always transitioning from that. So when you think of it in the play context, when you think of it in school context, when you think of it hanging out with your friends context, this is how our brain is consistently transitioning, right? Right now, I'm practicing mindset where I'm just telling you guys, I'm giving you guys thoughts, right? But I'm not really practicing a lot of mindfulness, right? I'm understanding a couple ideas in my head as I'm going through of where I want to potentially go, right? But ultimately, though, my mind, right, has a couple of ideas of right now I know I'm going to be talking about mindset, mindful, mindless. I'm talking about the offensive zone, the neutral zone, the D zone. I have some set ideas of choices that I'm going to consider in how I'm going to set my mind and what I'm going to choose to engage with and choose to think about and talk about here. So we're always dancing in between those. But ultimately, though, at the end of the day, right, mindless is the D zone part of our brain. So mindless is where I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say in terms of trying to pull it out and go. And I'm just going and articulating what I've experienced and what I know to be true as of now. 10 years from now, this talk will sound very different. 20 years from now, this talk will sound very different. Why? Because unconsciously, I'm building up different patterns. Unconsciously, I'm learning and I'm seeing more people, right, over the years. Michael knows, right? If you were talking to me 3-4 years ago, it was a lot different than after I'd worked in the NHL and seen what an NHL culture looks like, right? So once I gained confidence and I saw, oh, wow, a lot of our stuff also applies to NHL players, right? Very good, top talented players in that end. Some of the best D1 players in college, right? Some of the best junior players and on and on. And you see that, okay, now this works with them too. So I'm gaining confidence even more. And so the process of me questioning whether or not this works becomes a lot more mindless in my process. And I have to defend less against my mind thinking, well, is this correct or not? Is this good information that I can pass on to the people I'm working with or not? Is this wisdom or not? And so for you guys, when you think about how you're transitioning, right? How many things when you're playing you don't think about anymore? You don't think about how you're skating a certain way. You don't think about how you're positioning your hands a certain way, right? There's certain parts, how you're getting your hips back. There's just certain parts. And some of those things you may at times think about, but we're talking about the generality of you're now at a level, right? Between Remy and Michael, you're now at a level that you've reached where there's a lot of parts of your games, 2,000 bits of information that's unconscious that you're just doing, that you've become good at, that you're just doing mindlessly, that you don't have to think about. You don't have to, right, defend in any way. You just do it. But when it comes to mindset performance and it comes to being mindful, where we turn around the idea of mindless, right, where we build off the concept of mindless is that, do I understand at times that when I'm challenged by something, right, when I'm in a challenging situation, do I know how to protect myself in that unconscious state? So let's say I go out on the ice, right, and we're using the shooting analogy, and I go out and I try to shoot the puck in a certain situation, and the shot gets blocked. Oh, see, I suck at that shot. I'm not any good at it. That is an opportunity where we talk about defending our mind. We want to be mindful in that moment, and we want to go on the offense. We want to set our mind, right? We want to practice mindset where I want to be conscious of, well, wait a second. Is that going to help me shoot the puck the next time the way I want to? Or by judging myself right now, I'm going to miss the opportunity to do it because I just put myself in a completely, this is important, in a completely different state of mind because how I perceived my own actions, behavior, my own reality. And so this is the duality, guys, that we talked about weeks ago, but when we talk about the duality of hockey, right? And we talk to you guys all the time, hot and cold, night and day, home and away, male, female, yin and yang, right? There's all these different energies that are a duality. They're two different energies that play off each other. And so in this context, when we talk about mindset, mindful, mindless, there's two different ways to look at this. There's a positive energy to this, right? When we're in that state of how we're using our mindset, how we're being mindful, and how we're practicing mindlessness, where we're just doing, we're just acting unconsciously. And then there's another state that's a negative state, right? Where we're not in the best condition. We're tired, we're hungry, right? There's all these different ways where now the framework, the transition game framework, gets completely shifted based on which place you are in mentally. So if you're in a good mood, your mindset, mindful, mindless will be completely different in how it gets expressed than when you're in a bad mood. And so that's the part that we want to consider because you want to know both, right? As a bloodline brother or sister, you want to understand both sides because that's the game. I'm not always going to feel positive and I'm not always going to feel negative. But if I understand how both get expressed when I play, right? So my shot, hey, when I'm in a good mood and I know I'm going to shoot the puck when I enter the zone, awesome. I know my options. I'm feeling confident today. I see what's available. I'm aware of it coming through. Boom. I see my choices. I make them. Bam. I'm feeling good. Don't have to defend much. I'm not going to have a lot of things in my head. I'm feeling confident, mindless. Go create, make magic happen. But when I'm in a toxic state, when I'm in a negative state, I might be injured. I might be tired, right? All these different things. Well, now I got to pay attention to, well, as my mind's, oh, I can't get that shot off today. Whoa, hold on. I got to be mindful. Yeah, you know what? I'm not feeling as great. I'm playing with somebody that doesn't move the puck as much today. That's okay. All right, I got to be careful not to allow. I got to defend against my mindlessness right now because unconsciously, I'm taking myself to a place that isn't helping me right now in my performance. And so it's important to recognize both sides. And this is something when it comes to mindset, that always concerns me when I hear influencers, when I hear people talking about on social media. Mindset is so important. And you've got to set your mind. And then when I hear players talk about, that's right, go do it, go do it. The reality is all of us on this call, every single one of us, our brains are always transitioning in how we think, always transitioning. We're always between. Even when I pause and I stop, there's a part of me that's mindful of being able to look at Michael, seeing how I was reacting, being able to see Remy, right? Being able to see, okay, are we staying on target with the words? There's always that part of me, right, that's kind of hanging in that conscious state of what I want to make sure is clear in what we're talking about. But again, if I was feeling tired tonight, right, if I was feeling exhausted, if I was injured, right, what ended up happening? Hey, once the back injury came, I told you guys, hey, can't go on today. It's okay. Because I recognize, you know what? Hey, when it comes to unconsciously, I know where I'm at and I know how it's about to impact my game. Me sitting here with you guys and grabbing at my bag and stopping and just not being able to think clearly, what was the point of bringing you guys on? There's no point. I knew, hey, you know what? Live to fight another day. Come back next week. We get back to work. And that's okay. So this is the part that I want you guys to really consider in your own thought process, in your own transition game. Do you recognize the difference between the three zones of how your mind is consistently operating? And again, it happens super fast, right? When we say the transition, just like when we play on the ice, everything in our brain, it's happening super quick, right? Your mindset, that's pretty easy. You make a choice and decision, you can say, I'm going to go to the net every single time. But you have to be mindful of, yeah, but if I'm standing in front of the net and the puck is out of the zone, well, I got to go get on sides. So I can't keep standing in front of the net. I got to make a decision and say, I got to be mindful and say, wait a second, the puck is now over the blue line. I got to make a choice and get out of there, right? So you can set your mind, but at the end of the day, you have to be conscious of, well, wait a second. How do I reposition myself? How do I help my teammate best? How do I make sure I see where the opponents are at? How do I see where the puck position is? We're always in that state of mindfulness if we choose to see it. Because most players play between, I set my mind, or I'm mindless and I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing unconsciously. And so this is the part that we want to challenge you guys on, is to think about this process. Dive into this process. Know how your brain operates inside of this transition game. Because it's not as simple as saying mindset and that's it. That's one part, for sure, of the thought process. I'm going to go shoot the puck. Cool. But then mindful. Well, how am I going to shoot it? How am I going to shoot it? Where am I going to shoot it from? Who's going to give me the puck in order for me to shoot it? What are all the different plays of how my body moves in order to be able to do it? What are the decisions I'm going to have to make in order to position myself best to be able to get that puck? Where do I like to shoot the most? Where do I hate to shoot? Right? These are all different questions that, if you're not mindful and you don't go diving into that neutral zone, well, then the speed between the two zones, right, is limited. Because if all you have in your mind is, I'm going to do this, and then unconsciously, I don't really know what I'm paying attention to, then there's a major gap in opportunity. There's a major gap in what you're able to actually accomplish as a high performer. And so as we go through right now and we go into discussion mode, here's the stuff we'll talk about right now. Right? Mindset. Identify one high percentage skill that you commit to executing every time you play to bring value to your team. So what are you committed to doing consistently? What do you know? Non-negotiable. Yep. Here's one skill that happens a lot. Again, when we say high percentage skill, we're talking about a skill that happens often in your game, whether offensively or defensively. Here's something that I do a lot in the game. That's what we're asking you to do. Not something that happens once or twice, but something that you know is repeatable, consistent. Yep, this is something that brings a lot of value that I do consistently. So you identify that. Then being mindful is, well, now how can you direct this one high percentage skill? And we want to think about, how can you adapt it? How many different ways can you execute this skill in a game performance? What are all the different nuances that you could potentially see in how you might create that high percentage skill? What are all those different ways? And then mindless is thinking about owning the high percentage skill and confidently state what you know is automatic for you when executing this skill. So what's important here is for you to think about, what do you know you don't have to think about? I don't even have to be mindful of that. I don't even have to set my mind to that. I just do that. That's an automatic, right? Because it's important to, again, recognize it in your own self. Is it automatic that when my teammate doesn't pass the puck to me, I get really upset? That just irks me. Okay, is that an automatic response that I'm having? Because then if it is, that's something that you want to reverse engineer and say, well, let me be mindful of how I can build this up, right? Let me be mindful of how I can build upon this context. And so then once I know what are all the different ways of, all right, well, I don't want to yell at them because if I yell at them, it's not going to work. And then our relationship, I'm not going to be able to get the puck as often. Okay, I got to figure this out. Well, mindset then is, okay, here's what I'm going to commit to. I'm going to commit to making sure I'm not going to yell at them. I'm not going to yell at them because I know it doesn't get me anywhere and it doesn't help. So I'm going to put my energy into that if I see the bad play is made, my mind is set. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm committed to doing that consistently because I know that's not going to get us anywhere. And so you see how we transition, and you can take this thought process so many different ways, but recognizing the different layers is really what we're battling for in how we build this out. And so as we go through, making sure you guys understand that, right? So as you guys roll through, right, Michael, Remy, as you guys are going through that, what's an example that works for you guys? When you think about those scenarios, let's talk about that, and you guys kind of dive into, those aspects for yourself.
Sure. And just to zoom out for a second, the way I'm looking at this is being mindful is how you communicate with what you consciously observe in reality and what your subconscious mind thinks. And, that's the biggest part of this program and working with you is realizing that. Because, my mindset hasn't changed really. I've always wanted, I've always kind of felt I was a good skater and I wanted to use more of my skills and feel more confident with the puck. That was my goal. It's always been my goal, and it still is. But being mindful has allowed me to realize that more often because let's say in practice when I move my feet and I skate, being mindful is like, oh, holy crap, you did it. It worked. Not just like brush it off like, oh, it's practice. It's like, no, I consciously recognize I did this exact play. I took this exact angle. It works every time. Every time I move my feet in practice, doesn't matter if the puck gets poked, it still goes in the direction I want it to. And it's recognizing the reality, and then putting that in your subconscious mind so you don't have to think about it. And mindful allows you to translate reality to your subconscious. Because, subconsciously before I'd always be worried about, losing the puck and what happens if that happens and the turnover. And I don't want to, sewer my goalie with a breakaway after I lose it on the blue line or, and
Sure.
But that wasn't reality, and I was never mindful of those thoughts. And even now when I do lose it, if I'm mindful of like, oh, okay, puck stayed inside the zone, it's not a disaster. I should have moved my feet more. I waited too long. I'm thinking about other things and how to improve it, and not just automatically just being negative, which that's a natural human reaction when you mess up. Shot gets blocked, you're like, ah, shit. I coach in sports told me 1,000 times not to get the shot blocked. But and you got to be mindful of that. When you get the shot blocked and you feel upset, you got to be mindful, like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm upset now, but that's not going to help me take the next shot. Maybe if you got the shot blocked, don't be in such a rush to shoot. Like, did you have more time? Yeah. Then why just shoot it?
Exactly.
And I kind of touched on being specific, but with me, it's skating. That's the skill I want to work in, specifically just moving my feet on every touch. I'll go back and watch video and be like, oh, wow, I had eight, 9 rushes. That's good. But, this one play at the blue line, instead of just rimming it down right away, I could have just taken one step and then see what happens. Maybe it does nothing, but there's a chance that I could beat that guy and then create more offense instead of just dumping it down. And, worst case scenario, okay, I just dump it down again. It's not a big deal.
Love that. Love that. No, and you nailed it, right? It's the reality part of the situation until you are mindful of the experience of what you wanted to set your mind to and realize either A, it works, or B, it doesn't, and then realize how it does work or doesn't work, that's the part that I see such a disconnect with so many players on the mindless part. Like so many players just want to go play and not think, right? But the reality is, okay, you want to play and not think, but you keep making the same mistake over and over again. You keep doing the same thing, right? Definition of insanity, right? Einstein, right? Definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over again. And it's going to work, it's going to work. But if you don't know how you're even making it work, then you can't replicate it. If you can't replicate it, then you're not going to be able to just go out and just play. And that's always the interesting irony, but you're 100% spot on. The mindful part is really the core of so much of our process, is making you mindful, like making you understand. But I stay away from the mindfulness part aspect of the buzzwords, because you know how I roll with it. It's, to me, it's not just one word. Even though we say mindset and performance, now we use mindset and performance, right? The only reason why I even stick with that brand anymore, guys, is because it's just what the public's been used to. I start off as mindset performance coach. So people have been used to it for so long, it's kind of like how I've gotten branded. So it's like, all right, I'm going to keep going with it, right? But it's just more for people to kind of relate to it. But in the end, internally, these are the types of discussions. This is what we're diving into to help you guys understand. It's not just one thing. It's not just mindset and that's it. It's multiple layers, right? It's understand the synergy of, it's my, well, who am I playing with? What type of system are we playing, right? What type of level am I at? And on and on. What type of opponents am I up against? There's so many different variables. So understanding that from your personal standpoint, that's more than just mindset. That's not just mindset. That's being really conscious of, what am I surrounded by? And what do I have? You know, who am I? And then what am I surrounded by with, you know, trying to get what I want? And so that's always the interesting part. But Michael, you nailed it, right? Of like, that's the part that you spend so much time, is the mindful piece, is really understanding and then experiencing it in reality. That's the challenge, right? For so many of us. Remy, talk about, you know, what kind of sits with you from your process and maybe what from Michael brought up.
Yeah, so with my mindset, like after like my elbow injury, like I really saw like I had to get my confidence back with the game because like I was like after like going on the ice and like playing a couple games, like I knew something was wrong with my game. So like I really started like practicing and like trying to like get myself back in the game. But I was really mindful of the like I was actually starting to like drive the puck more. I was actually trying to get more shots on net. I wasn't like afraid to like get the puck and like try to dish it off to another player. But now like mindlessly, like I'm like way more like confident with the game. Like I feel like my back to my old self, and I feel like way more confident.
That's awesome. And what did you notice of like coming back to your old self? You know, what were the parts that got you to your old self?
Like all like my speed was like like was back. Like I was in like less tired and like trying to get back onto the bench and like not like be part of the play. And I was like more eager to like get the puck and like try to like create opportunities.
And how did you notice of like, you know, when you say your speed, what specifically did you do with your speed that got you to that point? That got you.
Well, like it's like miraculously come back. Like I had like put in the work in the gym and
Exactly.
like a lot of like speed and strength and like a lot of that. But yeah, like you could tell, like I could tell, like it was way more different than like me coming back in. I think it was January to July. I mean, yeah, July. So I feel like way more better, more confident, and like what ready like to play tier one this year. So I felt like way better.
Love that. And what's important, right, is like exactly what Michael brought up, is being able to recognize you are mindful of, I'm injured, but I still kept working my legs, right? I still kept committed to something that I was able to work on in my process. And that's what a lot, because imagine if you didn't, right? What if you didn't all those months take advantage and you weren't mindful of that, and you just were like, all right, I'm just going to let it heal. And when I come back, I come back. How much different would your experience have been?
Excuse me, I didn't hear the last part. What you said?
So imagine if you just went, right, and you didn't go work on your legs during that time, and you just came back and you just let your body heal on its own, but you didn't do the work on your legs to come back. How much different would that experience be?
Oh, way different. Like my endurance, anything, pretty much everything, because I wouldn't be able to do what I wanted to do with like no power, any of my legs. it would probably bring down a lot more confidence than I expected.
Bingo, right? So you were mindful in the process of what you needed to do, and that's what increased your ability, right? Of like carrying the puck, what you wanted your mindset to go do. But that's the part where if you didn't go do it, it would have literally changed the outcome of how you would have been thinking about the process, how you would have experienced the process, literally changed it. That's why for us, it's non-negotiable. When guys come to us, like if we get young guys in, right? When young guys come into our culture, like we had one young guy that came in recently, like, about 4 months ago, had no strength coach. So right away, Michael knows, right? We right away was like, well, no, that's non-negotiable in our, there's no way your thought process is going to be able to move and get to the next level if you're not doing a strength and conditioning program. That's one of the things people don't realize about our process is that when you come in and you're young, it's non-negotiable. We right away, oh, you don't have a strength coach? Here, you actually get one right away. We have somebody that online we're going to set you up with, and they're going to help you out in this process. That's non-negotiable when you come to us. But recognizing that the unconscious patterns of their ability to perform, like you said, on that end, that's what we mean by the transition between, there's a huge difference mentally between players who work out or work on their skills, right? They put in the time, and the players that don't. Some are naturally gifted, sure. But the ones who don't put in any time, have the natural gifts, whatever is cool. They're doing that, but they're limited to what they're able to do in the game versus the ones that work out, the ones that work on their skills. There's a different aligning of how they see the game because they see the outcome of, oh, I've mindfully put my frame on and said, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to set my mind to go do this. And as time went on, you built up these unconscious habits that you don't even have to think about. You're just doing. And that's what's really hard for people to understand about thought process or mindset and performance in general, is that you have to keep building upon the connection between the physical, mental, and the emotional. That's ultimately what creates the spiritual aspect of the game. If physically you're competent and you feel strong, mentally you can make good decisions, your emotions are going to feel good, you're going to be spiritually aligned. But if you're doing the game and you're basically, okay, you work hard in the gym, but you don't know how to think the game and you don't know how to make good decisions, that's going to impact your emotion. You're going to get frustrated. You're not going to feel good about yourself. And that's going to impact you spiritually. You're not going to want to play the game that way. And so that's where the aligning comes in, where it's not as simple as what people think it is. Just set my mind, that's it. You have to understand the different components of how your mind transitions. There's a trio in there, and respecting each one is massive. And like Michael pointed out, being able to be mindful, that's really at the core of, again, when we lay out, if we talk about, right, how this thing moves, the infinity loop from offense to defense, offense to defense. Well, right in the middle there, right where that transition happens, that mindful part is really what we're expanding. That's the part that we're trying to make bigger, bigger, bigger. So you understand all the options that you have. That's why we talk about the duality of hockey or sports or whatever it is. We want to make sure that you have a connection between both worlds because you can think from each one, right? When our team has the puck, we think very differently than when we don't have the puck. When we have the puck, we're trying to make plays, we're moving, we're in an offensive state of mind of trying to create. But when you don't have the puck, you're kind of like, come to me. You're kind of like, okay, I'm going to move my body. I don't have to attack as hard because you're in essence going to come to me anyway. So it's a totally different energy. So because of that, that's why it's so important to understand and be able to see the difference between a mindset, mindful, and mindless energy. Because the more you can see inside of it and then build upon, oh, there's two different ways that this coexists, the more and more success you're going to have when you're actually using mindset and performance techniques when you play. Because now you're going to be able to see all of the possibilities. You're going to appreciate all the possibilities. You're going to understand, oh, there's how I think about it. There's how my line mate thinks about it. There's how my coach thinks about it. There's how my parents think about it. You're getting all different flavors, which is okay, and how everybody thinks about it. But fundamentally, the only thing we care about is, like we always talk about, how do you think about it first? Right? It's the old put on the mask on the plane first. Right? First, you have to know how you think about it. First, take care of yourself. then take care of others around you. And that's why we push so hard on what do you believe first? That's belief system 101. And it's hard for a lot of people to recognize that. It's hard for parents to recognize that. It's hard for coaches to recognize that. It's hard for leaders to recognize that, right? There's a lot of ego. I told you this. I told you what to do. You should be doing it. Right. I told you. That doesn't mean that your brain believes in what I said. Just because I told you, it doesn't mean you believe it. It just means I told you. But my job as a leader, teacher, wisdom, whatever you want to call it, is to be patient with you, to help you understand, well, how can you believe it? How can you believe in this thought process? And that's the part for you guys to really consider, right? Of as you're using this, because you guys are pretty good with this, right? You guys get it. You've been using it. You've been working at it. But really where the challenge comes in is, well, how do I then impact the others around me? As Michael learned last year, right? Of he started implementing a lot more of how do I implement this in with my teammates? And it's a different kind of challenge, right? Coaching and playing are two different animals. When I switched from player to coaching, it was like, whoa, you went from thinking about yourself to, oh, now you're thinking about what everybody sees. And oh, that's a whole nother thought process. That's one thing why I'm such a proponent of, I want all players to practice and be a part of coaching a team in some way. It's the best way to instantly open up your mind to, oh, wow, how coach thinks is a lot harder than I thought. Because if you felt the feeling of what it feels like to coach, you'd understand right away, okay, mindset, mindful, mindless. Wow, this is challenging to get others to buy into what you think.
Yeah, I agree with like the coaching part because like when I broke my elbow, I was on the bench. Like you're like really mindful because you can like see the game and like see what's going on and like see what's happening. So I really agree with that coaching part.
Yeah. Makes a big difference. Right? Anything else to add, guys, on it of like there's between that, the triad or trio, hat trick, whatever we're gonna call it, between the three energies.
Sure, it's like could add another analogy in. It's like the apps on your phone. Mindset's a specific app you click on and what specifically you do. And then, you need to be aware of what apps you're on and what you do on them. And mindless is just the stuff that's already on your phone and all the cookies in the background tracking your your website history. But you got to be mindful of what's going on in the background and mindful of the bad apps or the bad software you have on your phone. And you got to click on specific things to get rid of it and offload it.
Exactly.
You got to look at reality and build that up to offload the bad previous thoughts and however they got in there.
Exactly. And it's a great analogy, right? That Michael brings up. What do we know about apps today? How do apps operate today? What are we doing every other day with an app? What happens? What are we doing every 2 to 3 days with an app, every week with an app? What usually happens? What's that thing we have to do? Update the software.
Oh, I never update my iOS. Just on like 12 or whatever.
Dude, I had to update Zoom. What a pain in the butt. People couldn't get into the normal, like the code, my personal code. And I'm like, what is going on? And then finally I realized you had to press a button on the new update. But yeah, the updates, guys, the software updates. Why do we talk about version 1.0, 1.2, 2.0? Because your thinking is always updating, right? When you read a book or you watch a movie, how many times have you guys seen a movie when you were a kid and then you watched it when you were older? Or you read something when you were younger and you read it again when you were older, right? When you heard information at one point and then you heard it again a couple weeks later. We're always updating, we're always changing, we're always growing. So the information, right? It's the old, a man never steps in a river, same river twice. It's the same idea. Like information is always moving. Information is always updating. And so the app analogy is another great one. I love that one of like, it's always updating, right? You can't, why does the iPhone, right? There was a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever it's up to now, iPhone 15 or 14 or whatever it's up to, 13, right? It's going to be iPhone 30 probably at some point, or maybe they're just going to change it and say, okay, new. Not iPhone now, it's iPhone 2.0, next wave, whatever it's called, right? But the updates keep happening. We keep on, okay, update the software. And that's the same idea with mindset and performance, right? It's a great analogy Michael brings up, right? Is we want to constantly think about that of like, am I updating my software? And the only way to do that is to engage in the reality, to be mindful of, well, I made these choices this week. Did they work? Are the choices that I'm making things better? Or, hey, I made these choices in the game. You know what? I thought they were going to work, but they didn't. The proof, right, is in the actual outcome of the game. That's why process over outcome. You have to understand the process, but you need the outcome to gain confidence. You can't just say process, and never experience an outcome. Then it would never work. The process would never work if you never had an outcome attached to it. So that's something too, Michael knows, like he's probably hearing me say the first time of that I'm also growing through my process of realizing, yeah, the process is greater than the outcome, but the outcome is still equal in terms of they still both are part of the same sandwich. They still need to both be there. You can't just say one is greater than the other. In one context, yes, I could, but in another, no, they're part of the same sandwich because I need to see the result in order to gain confidence in the process. They go hand in hand. Anything else, guys?
Oh, I mean, I got one more thing about
Yeah.
being mindful. I love watching Quinn Hughes highlights or watching him play. I'm a defenseman, you know, I want to move like that. But you know, it's one thing I've been starting to focus on now is what's happening 10, 20 seconds before that play happened. You know, where's the puck 10 seconds? You know, where's that winger that's supposed to be guarding him in their D zone? Does he have his back turned? Is he coming out from the wall? Is he coming out from the middle? Is he coming with speed? Is he playing passive? It's all these other things that I'm noticing that play into each highlight.
Yeah.
And that, you know, you got to be mindful of where's the forward coming from. You know, did the forward just like for some reason get off in the neutral zone and there's so much space, you know, and then, you know, so don't be frustrated in games when that space isn't there. Like if that one highlight doesn't happen because the conditions weren't there. Or, you know, when he doesn't have space, it's like, oh, okay, he just taps it to the middle and goes. Or you know, just recognizing what's going on before he gets the puck.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, he did the head fake and it works every time. No, he doesn't do the head fake every time.
I love that. Remy, anything resonate on that?
I mean, I'm a forward, but like he's about like highlights, like it's like you try to like perform the highlight, like so he doesn't always do like the same thing like over and over again. Like he always does something different. So like try to do the same thing over again, like it's not gonna always happen, but it's like there's always something different you have to do. Like
Exactly. Like the one thing we know about every single player and every single game they ever played. There isn't one game that you guys ever played where you literally went through the same exact patterns every single game. Not one. Right? But let's just think about that for a second. Of all the games we've played, there's never been one single game where you literally went through the same exact pattern of the game twice. Just that alone is crazy to think about. Of all the games we played, right? That we've never actually had that experience of two of exactly the same pattern. Similar nature, right? The systemically where we move, but there's always a nuance. There's always a chip off, go this way, carry this way, pass and go. There's always just some little different change that completely changed the expression of something that looked the same, but it was different, right? Receive the puck on the wall, I can chip it, I can pass it, I can carry it. So depending on just those three variations within that, and that's just one single snapshot. That's not including then with the rest of what ends up happening. And so, well, good stuff, guys. Appreciate you shooting on. It was good to be able to hang out with you guys and walk through the breakout together and all that. I think it was the first time I was actually hanging out and listening in and contributing all that. But no, I appreciate you guys coming on. We'll be back at her next week. Everything's good. Heads up. So we'll be back next week. And then the following guys, I'll be in Austria. So I'm going with Team USA with the Atlantic District and all that stuff. So I'm heading out there with them. So we won't have it not next week, the following week. And so I'll keep you guys updated on that. we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Yep. You're
Right.
welcome. Yep. See you guys.
Thanks, Vinny.
Later, brother.